Hi, so I wanted to give this just a very basic uh, portrait type guide. This can be done for anyone, any type of situation, generally outside. So one of the first things you need to do is to find the shade. Try to find shade. Put your subject in the shade. Then you're going to expose for the background highlights. Um, One of the things about exposing for the background highlights is that the rest of the picture might be a little darker, but you can bring those shadows out in post-production, especially if you're shooting raw. So that's the key, is you're shooting raw the whole time. So then what you're going to do is once you've balanced, once you've exposed for your background highlights, then you're going to be filling that subject with flash in the form of fill flash. Now what I do is I do not use ETTL when I'm doing portraiture because of the simple fact that the color of people's clothing can affect the amount of light that comes out of the flash. So generally when I'm doing portrait and not just very quick snapshots or street photography, I will shoot the whole thing manually. The camera manual, the flash manual, and many times, if I've got a lot of time, I'll focus manually also. I always focus on the eyes. If the eyes aren't sharp, the picture isn't great. So I always make sure to focus on the eyes and ensure enough depth of field so that the nose and the back of the head are still in focus. Now, that doesn't leave much room for error. So if I'm using my 70 to 200 millimeter zoom on my Canon, what I'll do is I'll usually shoot anywhere from f4 to f5.6 if I want to make absolutely sure, if I've only got like one or two shots, like if I'm doing sports photography, I've only got, if I'm doing teams and I'm doing individuals and it's a rapid turnover of people, I want to make sure that I don't have to redo that shot because of sharpness. So I'll make sure that I have enough depth of field. Usually f5.6 is great. It's great insurance. So we talked about depth of field. Consider using off-camera flash. Now, it's funny because a lot of people talk about off-camera flash, and what does that mean? Well, it just means getting the camera off of the getting the flash off of the camera itself. Now you can use several things. There's cords, which the cord will connect to the flash, and then the flash connects to the camera. But now you have to do something with the flash. So you either have to hold it up, which with a big rig like this is almost impossible, or you have to have another light stand, some type of a stand. The problem with that, if you're doing portraiture very quickly or taking very quick shots, you can miss a lot of the shots because you've moved your camera, but you didn't move the flash, so now the picture is off. So what I tend to do is I tend to use one of these light modifiers on my flash. It kind of shoots the light in all directions. It provides a little bit softer light. It's not perfect, but if I keep it on the camera and I'm doing quick portraits, it's great. If I've got a lot of time, then yeah, I'll set up an umbrella, I'll use a flash modifier, I'll use this by Rogue, which you put the flash inside and it kind of creates a little softbox. You can use this on camera. It works really well. I've used it before. But if I'm doing like team stuff, team sports and different teams, I'm just using the flash and my camera, as you see here, on my tripod. I always use a tripod. One of the reasons why I always use the tripod is because if I need to go and do an adjustment on the subject, I can leave my camera exactly where it's at. I would sometimes use a monopod, but then I would find that I would have to set the camera down somewhere, and then I'd have to pick it back up again. So what I tend to do is I set the tripod in one location. If I'm doing sports teams and I'm doing the individual portraits, I'll set the tripod down. I'll make an X right underneath the center post of the tripod. So now I always know where my tripod's at. I'll measure out approximately 10 feet and I'll put a little box. The person stands inside the box. I now know my exact camera to subject distance, and I can set up my flash accordingly. And then when I focus manually, just about every person is going to be in focus. I always check the focus, and I always review every image after I've made the image to make sure that, number one, the person's eyes are open, the expression is the way that I want. I don't want them to have some kind of goofy face. I want them to have a nice smile. I always try to work with the person to make sure that they look their best. That's pretty much it as far as just some basic portraiture guidelines and how to shoot. If I'm shooting teams specifically, like for baseball, one of the things that you always have to be aware of is the cap. Okay, so now you got this baseball cap on, and generally what they do is they try to curve this cap as much as possible, and now you get this big shadows here, especially if you're shooting down onto the subject. So you always want to make sure that, and don't be bashful, is say, hey, raise your cap up a little bit, and then shoot them as straight on as possible, so that that flash will fill in all the shadows underneath. You don't want that telltale, there's going to be, if you shoot from the top, there's always going to be like a shadow coming across here. You don't want that. So always make sure you have that covered. I will shoot exactly in this position on the tripod. I will do all my individual shots for the teams in that manner, and then I will disconnect my camera. I'll set my tripod on the side with my lens attached off in the corner, protected. I'll put on a wider angle lens, and then I'll go ahead and take my group shot. When I take my group shot, I get as close to them as possible. And the reason why I get as close to them as possible is because it minimizes the flash output. So my subject to camera distance is shorter, so I don't need as much flash to put out to cover the fill and cover up all of the shadows. So that's especially important if you do have to shoot outside. If you have to shoot in full sun. So that's what I do. If I'm outside in full sun and I don't have any shade, kind of the same rules apply. I'm exposing for the background, but now I have to get even closer because that flash has to now overpower as much of the sun as possible so that I don't get any shade, any shadows in the face or under the hat. I've never really had a problem finding shade. You can find it anywhere, under a tree. You can create your own shade. I've used a stand with a reflector over the person's head, and I'm just, throughout the day, I'm able to If I'm doing the baseball team, I can just keep moving that reflector around so that this portion of their body, which is the most important part, is in the shade. And then again, I just need to expose for the background. And I've done that in full open fields, so that's really not a problem. I always do use a light meter for my flash. I don't know, I'm a little bit geeky about that. So I do use a light meter. I don't use it for every single shot. I might use it, you know, I'm going to use it if the light changes. Because most of the shots are going to be able to use some minimal adjustment for the lighting, either decreasing or increasing. I also always do a white balance. Again, as the light is changing, if it's in the morning, it's going to be one reading. If it's in the afternoon, it's going to be something else, and in midday. I also profile using a color checker passport. You don't have to use that. I find it's really nice. It works great. It keeps all my colors fantastic. And really, I think that's about it. If you have any questions, just drop me a line, send me an email. And this is just some basic tips on photographing people, photographing sports teams, and hope you enjoyed it, and hope it was informative. Thanks.